can't believe it's 30 years ago.
It supports the county, it's about the county, it promotes the county.
You made a huge contribution to the community in the county over the last 30 years. I'm looking forward to listening in over the next 30.
And all I can say is, you don't look it. You don't sound it either, really.
Because we love stories.
People.
Music.
Sport.
Because we love our county.
BBC Radio Gloucestershire.
Radio Gloucestershire.
Today then, I want to take you back 30 years to the very day this radio station went on air. I've got some rare archive material and I'm using the original jingles. You'll hear from station manager of the time, David Solomons, who sadly died some years ago, Ken Goodwin, the first breakfast show presenter, programme organiser Rob Salvage, Nick Herbert, Ivor Ward Davis, who read the news, and of course station mascot Eric the Mouse. Let's start with the very first few minutes of BBC Radio Gloucestershire's life with Ken Goodwin.
It's 6 o'clock Monday, October the 3rd. This is BBC Radio Gloucestershire. Would you please put your hands together and welcome station manager David Solomons?
No, Ken, no, that's way over the top. I just wanted to welcome everyone to our launch day, not announce the start of the Olympic Games.
Hang on, but it is the opening, isn't it? I mean, it's a first blooming day, bringing a new kind of broadcasting to the county. That's got to be important.
Well, I know it's important, but it's not that important. I mean, we're just a local radio station opening, that's all.
Just? But we'll be covering the whole of the county. It's never been done before. And we'll have a radio car, big events. The news team, they're dying to get out and scour the towns and villages for those hot stories.
Of course they will. Yes, they'll be out there and our presenters will be presenting their programmes. But all radio stations do that.
No, they don't. We'll have financial news, weather, sport, consumer affairs, Geraldine McCullough, Mike Darbo, me, Ken Goodwin. Hi there. We're important, aren't we?
Yes, of course you're important, but I mean, I just didn't want to make too much of a song and dance about it. I mean, I don't want people to think that we're boasting about what we're going to do. We're just going to go out there and do it. And I mean, you haven't even mentioned the most important person of all, our mascot, Eric the Mouse.
Oh, Eric, important. He's just a mouse. He's a rancid little rodent.
A rancid little rodent? Of course I'm important. What makes you think I'm not important? David, tell him I'm important. Come on, David.
Kenny is important.
See, I'm important. David said so.
All right, okay, I'm sorry.
Very important.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Eric.
Good.
If you think the fanfare's over the top, can I just play a little fanfare?
Well, a little one. That's better.
It's all right. The boss has gone now. I reckon he'll be back later, though, to tell you a little bit more about Radio Gloucestershire. In the meantime, it's on with the show. I'm Ken Goodwin, your breakfast show host. This morning we're literally all over the county, up in the air, out on the roads. Watch the skies for Rob Salvage, who's touring the county by helicopter. And even more down to earth, the Radio Gloucestershire double-decker bus will be driving around all day. Why not hop on board and meet Eric the Mouse? We're visiting places that, like Radio Gloucestershire, have an early start. And on the day that we're celebrating the launch of the country's newest radio station, we meet people who also have a reason to pop the champagne corks. Monday, October the 3rd. A new day, a new radio station. BBC Radio Gloucestershire. But first, let's catch up with the news.
Davis. Senior officers from 5 police forces, including Gloucestershire, are to meet today to discuss the latest wave of arson attacks by Welsh extremists. An estate agent in Shipping Camden was among 6 others to have incendiary devices.
And as you heard, not quite a perfect start, but what would you expect? Everyone and everything was brand new. We'll hear now from the man you heard first there. This is Ken Goodwin, now of course on the telly, who must have fantastic memories of that morning back in 1988.
I do, and it was incredibly exciting. It's always exciting to be part of something new. I was very flattered to be asked to be the presenter and producer of the breakfast programme. It was quite a lot to take on. I originally started there during training just as a news producer and was suddenly out of the blue asked if I'd like to be a presenter, and I kind of remember saying to the station manager, no, I'm a journalist, I'm not a disc jockey. And he said, dear boy, we don't have disc jockeys at the BBC, we have presenters and they're all journalists. So when he mentioned that my fee would be a bit higher for coming in so early in the morning, I said, I'll do it. It was great fun. I was a bit nervous at first, as you always are with something new. There was a fairly well-established commercial radio station in the area. That was quite stiff competition. But I think we gave it a good shot. It was great. Being part of a new team was really good. And I think in regional radio, local radio, there is always a family feel to it. Everybody feels part of a big family. And that's what we were. We were a new family, actually, weren't we? You know, we're all getting together, finding out our weaknesses, our strengths, all bonding. It was great fun.
And of course, Eric the Mouse, you called it a rancid rodent on your very first broadcast, and he came back, and David Solomon said, no, he's very important. And he said, see, David says I'm important.
The rodent, the rancid rat, yeah. It was a bold publicity strategy, without a doubt, and it gave us a very familiar bit of marketing, I suppose, but also it led to a lot of people taking the mick. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. People were talking about the station, they were talking about us, and they were listening to us, and that, at the end of the day, is the most important thing, isn't it?
And of course, on that first morning, you had Graham Gardner. He was out and about at people who were up early in the morning, wasn't he?
Yeah, and of course I'd worked with Graham before. We were old chums and we worked together. That gave me a very warm, cosy feeling that I was working with pros that I'd worked with before. It's always good to have a professional team around you. Always good to know that you can rely on people. If something goes wrong in the studio, you can throw to somebody who's out and about and they can get you out of a hole, basically. I do remember, I think on that first day, I pre-recorded half of the programme just in case something dire happened. I don't think anybody knows, actually, but I did actually have a big, the big reel-to-reel. People will remember in the old days those huge, great, big 12-inch reels of tape that you could have on massive tape recorders. You don't have any of that anymore, it's all digital. But I did record half the show just in case something went wrong. All I would have to do is flick a button. Hopefully nobody would know it was pre-recorded. There were no time checks, but it was just there. It was my bit of insurance. In fact, during the programme, I always used to have a couple of tapes on standby recorded with discs on, with records on them, just in case something went wrong. And I never actually had to use them, thank goodness. There was a lot going on in the breakfast programme, a lot of potential for things to go wrong.
And people don't realise, do they, that when you press that button and you're in charge of that studio and whatever happens is down to you, it is very, very nerve-wracking.
I'm going to tell you a quick story, and I don't know whether you'll be able to broadcast it, but it is funny, and it is one of those weird things that happened when I was doing an interview with somebody, and I had my headphones on, and I was just... You basically do something called pre-fading, and that means you're listening to another channel to make sure that somebody's there. And I was listening to this channel in one ear of my headphones to make sure the weatherman was there, and you could hear him rustling his paper, so yes, I knew he was there. But I could hear this other strange noise going on. It was a sort of a noise. I'm thinking, what is that? There's some kind of electronic blip going on there, a little sort of like this. I'm thinking, what is that? And I looked up, and this woman had popped her breast out and was breastfeeding a baby. And the microphone was level with her chest, and it was picking up the lovely little child suckling and making this noise.
No.
And to say my eyes kind of popped out on stalks. But she was doing this while she was chatting away during the interview. So alternatively, I was blushing, trying not to look, trying to look in the right direction, and also hearing this strange noise going on. But, that's what doing a live programme's about, having a bit of fun, coping with that kind of stuff, having a laugh. And, we had people like Mike Warburton, totally superb broadcaster, really brought finance alive, made it accessible to people, because back then it wasn't that hot a subject,
not at all.
Not the kind of subject it is today, and yet he made it accessible. He was great fun to work with, as were all the contributors that we worked with.
And of course, I remember your competition. You used to have a mystery voice competition, and you very sternly said to people, listen to the voice.
That's right. Any regular competition that gets people tuning in at a particular time in the morning. I have to say, though, I was probably a little bit unconventional for the BBC. I knew what time management started listening, and I think that was roughly 7 o'clock. I was on from about 6, so I used to play all sorts of weird stuff early on in the morning, like Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven, very little long tracks, stuff that I quite liked. And actually, you'd get truck drivers ringing in and saying, hey, I haven't heard that for ages, I really like it. So you could get away with one or two, pulling off a few little stunts, but that's what a breakfast show is about, putting your stamp on it, getting people to listen because they like you and what you're doing and saying.
And a great learning ground, and you've gone on to being big in television now, and it gets you into that sort of thing, doesn't it?
But do you know what? It's interesting, isn't it, that a lot of skills you learn in radio actually are really coming in useful now, because we're in a digital age, and all that kind of editing and sound editing that I did, I'm having to edit my own stuff in television now, and those skills that you remember from those days, even though it was editing on tape, the principles are still the same, and things like putting music onto pieces and all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah, you do learn a lot, and yeah, you do move on, but your heart always remains with your origins and where you came from, and I'll never forget working radio. Who knows, I might go back to it one day, I don't know, but I really loved it, and there is a special kind of intimacy that you have with a radio audience that you simply don't have on television, I think. That kind of intimacy where you're in their homes. In the morning, you could be in their bedroom, in their kitchen, in their living room. You could be anywhere in the house. They know you as a friend. And to a certain extent, that's true on television. People come up to you in the supermarket and say, oh, hello, and they treat you as an old friend. That's lovely. But in radio, you multiply that by about 10. Very intimate medium.
Ken Goodwin, the very first sound of BBC Radio Gloucestershire. And the first record played by Ken was this one by another of BBC Radio Gloucestershire's first presenters, Mike Dabo. This is Mighty Quinn.
Come on without, come on within. You'll not see nothing like the Mighty Quinn.
Radio Gloucestershire, Mike Dabo.
And of course that was Mike and Mighty Quinn. This is BBC Radio Gloucestershire. I'm Pete Wilson, looking back to the very first day of what was a brand new radio station in all respects. We heard Ivor Ward Davis reading the news at the start. Let's find out his memories of that first day.
To be quite honest, I almost overslept. We were doing some renovations in the house again, and we moved into my mother's, and my wife and I were sharing a single bed, and there was a cot in the room, and I was really nervous. The first day, we knew all the bigwigs were coming in, set the alarm, and I must have slept through it. Because the next thing I knew is that the baby, as she was then, had a little toy that went off when you whistled, and the alarm set that off, and that's what woke me up. Rushed into work, kind of got there, sat there in the cubicle, and the cubicle had a glass front. And it wasn't so much you were going on air live, it's just all the bigwigs were staring at you through that window. And my voice was quivering, and I almost fell apart. I mean, it just really was that sort of pressure. And you think, it's silly, isn't it? It doesn't matter if they're not looking at you, because the Queen could have listened to me. It wouldn't have worried me. But actually having the upper echelons of the BBC peering at you through that double-glazed window, and I thought, oh, was I so relieved when I got to the weather.
Of course, I don't know whether you know this, but the fader wasn't opened for your voice immediately by Ken Goodwin, was it? Or did you know that or not?
To be quite honest, I just went for it. I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't gone out on air at all. All I knew, I had to get through this news bulletin. And it was the first job with the BBC, I'd done independent before. And the whole tone of reading was better. Independent is much, you read very, very quickly, and the only way you can get any emphasis is put your voice higher, so you end up going like that until it says your brain's going to burst. The BBC, of course, is much more mellow, lots of gaps, and lots more time to make mistakes, especially when you're being scrutinised.
And can you remember any of the news that was on that day?
No.
What if I remind you, ARC in Fairford had a fire at the concrete works. They were just beginning to talk about something called the greenhouse effect, and you were it.
I could have been reading nursery rhymes for all I could remember. I mean, I just can't remember. It was just to get through it.
And clearly you'd started before, because news just doesn't arrive at 6 o'clock on the first day. You'd obviously been working for a long time building up.
I think we used to get about 4 or 4:30 in those days. And of course, it was all tape machines. You were editing using razor blades, none of this newfangled computerization stuff. And there was carts as well. You had to go from tape onto carts. You went in with this box of cartridges. They're about, 3 by 4 inches, old stereo 8 tracks. And you had to get them in the right order. And it was paper. You shuffled paper around. You
typewriters to type it on?
Oh yes, typewriters. And I was renowned for the most awful typing in the world. People always used to know when I wrote anything because there was a bit of Czechoslovakian or Welsh in there. And lots of C's and lots of Z's instead of the real word. And at the end of it, after a while, you could know by just because you set the studio up in different ways. headphones where the seat is, where the faders are, get the volumes on the mic and where the mic is, really. And you could go in there, you could just knew who was in there before you, just by the way it was set up. It was very funny, because we had a fairly stable group to start, as you would expect. And then you just learn to know little idiosyncrasies about people.
And it was a great team. Yourself, Mark Tulip, Neil Jakes, Mark Mitchell.
You couldn't ask for a better group of people. And I think one of the secrets was actually we were all pretty experienced journalists. We'd all worked elsewhere. There are very few, shall we say, junior members of staff there. So there's some pretty robust discussions and debates going on, but that's what made the newsroom good. We also, I think, probably developed the fruitiest language I've ever heard in a newsroom. It was when visitors came in and you said, look, could we just tone it down a little bit, please? Because you've got a WI group over there, and they don't expect language like this to be pushed around the news. It's a high-stress job. Most people can read, most people can talk. The only difference between that and talking on the radio, or television for that matter, is doing it under pressure. And that's it. So if the pressure started really hitting, then you started getting a little bit robust.
And Ivor did it on a regular basis. Let's have a listen to him now.
Neil Kinnock has said his re-election as Labour leader by an overwhelming majority means there is now a clear mandate for the adoption of what he calls a more realistic policy by the party. In last night's leadership ballot at the Labour conference in Blackpool, Mr Kinnock gained 89% of the vote. His deputy, Roy Hattersley, was also re-elected for another year. Thick fog is affecting roads in some areas of Gloucestershire with visibility down to as little as 20 yards. The M5 and parts of Stroud, Barclay and Tewkesbury are the worst hit by the fog, and the police advice is to drive with care.
I read the news today, oh boy.
The Beatles, A Day in the Life. I'm Pete Wilson, and today I'm bringing you a day in the life of BBC Radio Gloucestershire. In fact, the first day back on October the 3rd, 1988. Now, before the station opened, it had to be built. One of those responsible was Roy Priest. I asked Roy what was on the site before that time.
Well, actually, when I got there, they'd already started building it, but I was told it was the Pilkington Glass Works. But I've never actually seen a photo of it.
Really?
Yeah.
How long did it take to install?
Oh, ages. Actually, it wasn't too bad. I got there in January 1988, and it was due to open in September 88. And as always, BBC studios always take longer to build. But we did open in October, so 10 months we were on the air.
Was the equipment absolute state of the art at that time, do you think?
No. Well, I started in local radio in 1970 at Manchester. And the equipment was pretty primitive then. We had no CDs. When you play a record, it was a real record, vinyl record, and you put it on a thing called a slip mat. So you hold this slip mat, the record goes round, and you let the slip mat go. It's a piece of felt, and off it goes, you know. So we didn't have any CDs. This is going back to the 70s. If you wanted to put a telephone on the air, it involved 4 people. Just one phone call, and someone would ring up with the old phone with the dial in. You'd get an engineer into the ops room, and the engineer would plug up lots of cords, set up the line, say to the presenter, right, ready to go on the air now. The presenter would pick up their phone, open the phone, and it would be on the air. Now what they do is press a button on the computer and it goes on the air. So it's all changed very much.
And in those days, of course, it was only one phone call at a time. You wouldn't possibly get 2 people on air at the same time. Now you can have all sorts.
Well, you know, it took about 4 minutes to get one phone call. So you'd be spending 10 minutes to get 2 people on.
Was there a standard layout for BBC studios and local radio stations? Because there weren't that many at that time.
No, there weren't many. It started off with 6 and then it expanded to 20. There wasn't a standard layout because a lot of the studios were converted buildings, so you had to take the layout of the original building. But then they decided to standardise them, and they had what they called an inline layout, which Hereford and Worcester had. So all the studios were inline. So if you're in one studio and someone was in the next studio, they could be at the other end of the building, but you see them through all the glass windows. And in fact, Gloucester was one of the very first to have a different arrangement, which is all in a rectangle, so everyone's within eyesight of everyone else, and it worked very well.
How much did you actually do of the installation of the studio yourself? Because to my knowledge, you almost knew every wire and every cable in the place.
I think I probably did. Modest me. Yeah, people think, oh, it comes in a box and you open it and put it together. Well, it actually comes in about 500 boxes. Each bit of equipment has to be opened. I remember we had a big skip in the car park because there's so much rubbish just from the packaging. And we had about 1,000 pieces of equipment. When I arrived, the builders were still building it. I mean, there were still brickies there. and I moved into what was to become my office, and it was just bare walls, no plaster on it. There was a box, so I used to sit on the box. 9 o'clock in the morning I get in. The manager, who was the only other person on the radio station, was up on the first floor sitting on another box in his office. And the only technical equipment we had was 2 telephones. We used to phone each other. We didn't have computers or email or anything like that. So bit by bit the builders went away and they put the roof on and all the equipment started coming. And it's a funny situation, really, because I'm right there at the beginning. You've got probably £500,000 worth of equipment to get together, to wire together. But you've also got to think about, I need a screwdriver. What sort of screwdriver should I get? So, you had all this to think about. We had, in theory, engineers coming up from London. I was kind of a project manager, so you'd tell them what to do, and you have all the drawings. With no computers, it was all handwritten. And gradually, it all gets together, but it was a bit disorderly.
So was your title at the very start project manager then? Because I think we call you chief engineer at the end.
I'll tell you a funny story. When I first started in local radio, all the engineers were called station engineers, and then one day someone said to one of the station engineers, "Excuse me, where's the railway?" He says, no, I'm a radio station engineer. So they decided to change the title to engineer in charge. But by the time I got to Gloucester, there'd been 4 changes of title, and I ended up being called supervisory regional engineer, which I thought was silly. So the name on my door, someone came around from London, like they do, supervisory. Oh, this is no good. So I changed it to super engineer, super_engineer, which I thought was rather nice. After a while, I started getting letters addressed to the super engineer Radio Gloucestershire. So I like to think that was my title.
Do you remember where you were when the announcement was made that BBC Radio Gloucestershire was going to be formed and opened?
Oh yes, definitely, yeah. I was in Piccadilly Gardens in Manchester, and I thought, gosh, that sounds nice, Gloucestershire. I mean, Manchester's nice, but I thought it'd be nice to go down there somewhere. So I applied for the job. And I remember it was one of the rare occasions when the BBC had 2 interviews at once. So I actually applied for Swindon and Gloucester. And I'd done a bit of research, and I knew that the manager of each radio station had completely different ideas about their station. But it was one interview with both managers. So whatever question I was asked, I would offend one of them. I walked a very thin line. And I got to the end. At the end of an interview, they say, "Have you any questions to ask us?" I said, "Yes, you haven't asked me which station I prefer." And even then I thought, I can't say one or the other, when I get it. So anyway, I said, well, actually, I would quite like to go to Gloucester. And, in reality, I really wanted the Gloucester job.
And was it just you, or did you have assistants to help you with all this installation? And I know there were assistant engineers with you afterwards.
Yeah, well, during the build, it was just me. But I say, you do get people coming up from London. But we did have a calamity halfway through. It was about July when something went drastically wrong with the management in London, and I got there on the Monday morning. There were no engineers. It was literally just me. And for a month, I just had to do it on my own, getting whoever I could, to come in and give a hand.
And for those who haven't been to the radio station, it isn't a great deal different now from the day you installed it.
No, it's not very different now, actually. The studio layout is just the same. The thing that has changed is the equipment. That's completely changed because it's now all computerised.
We used to have reel-to-reel tape recorders called Studers, and there were loads of those, and they were, £6,000 each?
Yeah, the main studio tape recorder, they were actually £8,000 each. We had 24 of those. We had 28 Ewer tape recorders, which are the things that the reporters hang over.
They were called
shoulder.
portable, weren't they?
Well,
they weighed a ton.
They were the weight of 3 house bricks. I did weigh one once, and we always used to joke that all the journalists would go out and they'd come back lopsided. They always put the strap on the same shoulder.
What about test broadcasts before the radio station opened? I know they happened, didn't they? Tell me about that.
Well, there was a set procedure for test broadcast, and the set procedure was to do tones. They go, and then various people all around the country would do tests to make sure it sounded all right. And after a while, I thought, this is a bit boring. So one day I went up to the transmitter at Chosen Hill, disconnected the line, didn't tell anyone I wasn't supposed to do this, and I put on a tape of bird songs. And I broadcast this for a day and night, and people started to ring in. I thought, isn't this wonderful? They didn't know what it was. And the funny thing was, I remember the day we opened, we got someone rang in and said, what's happened to the bird noises? And amazingly, apparently, there are now commercial stations who broadcast that. So
you were a forerunner, you see.
I was there at the beginning. Yeah.
Bob Marley, Three Little Birds. Now, in the introduction to this station, Ken Goodwin said David Solomons, the station manager, would be back to tell more. Here's what he said.
Hello, I'm David Solomons, manager of Radio Gloucestershire. I just want to take a minute to tell you about some of the services we'll be providing on your newest radio station. For instance, we'll be broadcasting from all over the county, not just Gloucester, where our headquarters are. We've got studios in Cheltenham, Tewkesbury, Cirencester, Colford and Stroud, and we intend to report live from all those places on the topics of the day. Just keep listening. You'll hear the difference.
Let's move on now then to Rob Salvage, who was programme organiser at the start of the station. A larger-than-life character who was up in a helicopter on day one, but he was at the station long before that. So let's find out when he arrived.
Well, it was quite extraordinary. I mean, I got there in the January of the year because we went on the air in October, so quite a few months before. I mean, the place was still a building site. Fortunately, my father, who's sadly no longer with us, had actually been a kind of project engineer on building sites because I turned up and I was expecting to see studios and think about hiring presenters and all that sort of stuff. And at first, I can't remember the guy's name, he was ever so nice, but I was confronted with a load of technical drawings, you know, where do you want the pipes, where do you want the drains, where do you want the toilets, all that sort of stuff. And I didn't have a clue about this. So I used to go back at night and talk to my dad and say, you know, how do you build a building and stuff? And he helped me with that. Eventually, we ended up with a radio station, with studios and record players and all that sort of fancy stuff. And we started hiring staff. It wasn't really that difficult because the BBC hadn't opened a new radio station for quite a long time. There were a few others that were then going to come after us. So in some respects, we were quite lucky. And we actually had the pick of people who were around, who were maybe looking to move from other places, people in Gloucestershire who were really hungry for the idea of local radio, because there hadn't been proper local radio coverage in Gloucestershire before. So, you know, people did sort of find their way and beat a way to our door. We did a lot of auditions. I think that was one thing that was really important. We were very keen.
I've heard about these.
Yeah, well, we were very keen to get local people involved. So we literally did open the door and said, come along, it doesn't matter. If you think tap dancing should be on Radio Gloucestershire, we will listen to you. And boy, did we have some weird people who came along and wanted to do all sorts of strange things on the air. But some people who I think are still broadcasting today actually came...
Well, Alan Morgan, for one. Alan Morgan well remembers coming in, and the station manager... through you, telling him how he wanted his programme that he eventually got changed, and he said that he got 12 weeks. On the 12th week, David Solomons went to him and said, it's just what we want now, and the next week took him off.
Yeah, well, things like that did happen. Bit perverse, I suppose. Reg Moore, I've got a funny feeling, came along through that. Yeah. John Benz, who, with his mate Bill Zorn, did a sort of high-quality sort of entertainment comedy-type show, depending whether you like the comedy or not. But
Bill Zorn's, of course, is in the Kingston Trio now.
That's right, yeah. So a lot of people just literally turned up on our doorstep, and if we liked them, we put them on the air, sometimes with more successful kind of results than others. I mean, a lot of people were, to be perfectly honest, it wouldn't be true to say we poached, but a lot of the journalists came from Seven Sound and one or two from the Gloucester Citizen. I think, you know, Seven Sound, like ITV these days, was scaling back its local news coverage, and the BBC was seen as being the place to be, so people like Graham Gardner, you know, became household names through us. Claire Banks was there. Ivor Ward Davis, not quite sure. I think he was there. He was at Seven Sound. Yeah. Mark Mitchell was a Citizen man. So quite a lot of the journos knew the patch, and they were good. You know, they had good contacts books. And
what about the first day? What can you remember the first day?
Well, do you know, it's funny, Peter, because I can't remember a massive amount about it. I remember this huge build-up, and I also remember being involved in lots of discussions with royal protection people leading up to it, because we did eventually have a royal opening. Princess Anne came along, and we had to have lots of meetings to check out security and all that sort of stuff. But I know we had the bus that went around the county. We had terrible problems getting a signal from Stroud. I don't think that's changed. Still difficult to get anything out of Stroud. And we also decided we'd have a helicopter. Yeah, of course. You know, so we go around the county and we'd fly over the county. And I was in the helicopter. It was a very misty morning, and we were going to go up and down the motorway, do traffic news, and, you know, look at the county from the air.
You're listening to BBC Radio Gloucestershire. It's The Breakfast Show. My name's Ken Goodwin. Somewhere about to take off in the helicopter is Rob Salvage. How's it going, Rob?
Good morning to you, Ken. Well, we're hovering at the moment over the main runway at Staverton Airport in a Hughes 500cc jet helicopter owned and operated by Brian Ronsky. And it's, I'm afraid, looking a little bit murky. We've just come a few feet off the ground to have a look at the fog cover. Brian, give us a quick condition check.
Well, good morning, Rob. The weather conditions at the moment, no wind at all, so that'd be ideal for our flying, but unfortunately there's quite a lot of thick fog cover at the moment. We're going to have to wait until it gets a little lighter, till the sun comes just a little higher in the sky, maybe burns a little bit of that off, so we can get some idea where we're off to.
Thank you, Brian. We'll keep our fingers crossed then, Ken, that when the sun does come up, that fog will clear, and hopefully then we'll be able to fly a little bit higher over Gloucestershire and give you an aerial view, an aerial impression of how the county looks first thing in the morning.
I remember that, but it's all a bit of a haze. I mean, I breathed a huge sigh of relief, because even though we had a big, long lead-in time, you just don't ever believe it's going to go on the air, but it did.
And as programme organiser, did you literally do that? Did you organise programmes and decide what was going out when and who was going to do it?
I'd like to say that I did, and I was absolutely magnificently efficient at doing that, Pete, but I don't think, to be perfectly honest, I was only 30 years old. I was quite young to get a job like that in the BBC. I'd done a lot of programmes myself. I think I would describe myself as a bit more free-form. I enjoyed working on the programme side. I enjoyed working with the producers. I think we had a good relationship. I was pretty keen for quite a lot of them to find their own feet and develop their own style. That was very much my thing, was let's have this radio station as not some sort of Svengali character on the top, sort of saying this is what it's going to be, let's just see what happens. Which is a bit of an abdication of responsibility and an excuse of being disorganised, but...
Of course, you went on to present Salvage on Saturday.
I did, yeah, and that was fun. I wanted to stay doing stuff on the air, because that's what I'd come from. I'd always been a programme presenter. And we had the infamous Eric the Mouse Club on there.
Oh, yes, the Eric Club. We've got quite a few members already, you know.
Have you?
Yes.
How did you manage to get those then? You must have been going around the Forest of Dean, kidnapping people.
Lots of friends of mine in the forest where I come from originally, they've all wanted to join. So I've let them all join. It's really good fun.
Really?
Yes.
And what happens if they join the Eric Club then? Because we'd like lots of people to join, wouldn't we?
Yes, we would. Well, so far, what happens is everybody gets a number, because, you see, we want to know who everybody is. And we remember their birthdays, and we send them cards and things on their birthday. And they have to send us special jokes as often as they can.
Right.
And we also send them little badges and stickers and things of me, which is quite embarrassing. I wonder who's going to be 007.
Yeah.
I like James Bond. Do you like James Bond?
Oh, he's a bit rough for me.
He wears shirts like yours. That's a very loud shirt you've got.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Someone once said to me, is that a shirt or is it a skin complaint? Now, we've got someone on the line for you now, Eric, to talk to. Would you like to talk to
Oh, yes, please. Who is it? Are you there?
Yes.
Hello. What number are you?
Number 10.
You're number 10, are you? Hold on. I've got all my list of friends here. Ah, number 10. I think that your name's Hannah.
Yes.
And I can tell you your birthday's on May the 7th.
Yes, that's right.
How old were you on May the 7th, Hannah?
6.
Oh, that's quite big.
Yes.
It is, isn't it? Have you got any good jokes? I've been trying to think of some. Go on then. Who's there?
Isabel.
Isabel who?
Is a bell working? Because I had to knock.
Now, if I could send you anything, what would you really like? Would it be a photograph of me? Or would it be a sticker of me? Or a balloon with me on it? Or something like that? What would be the best thing to send somebody like you, Hannah?
I think it would be a sticker.
A sticker?
Yes.
What, sticker with Eric on it?
Yes.
Oh,
that
gracious.
would be the best thing. Should we send
Terrible taste.
all of our Eric Club members a sticker, Hannah?
Yes.
Well, we could do that.
All right.
Are you a good girl, Hannah?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, not all the time.
Well, I am if I'm with you, though. Or if I join the club.
Yes, you'll be a good girl then, won't you? Yes. Do your mum and daddy tell you off?
Yes.
What for?
Breaking the shower in a rented house.
You haven't broken the shower?
Yes.
Who told you off about that?
Mummy.
Your mummy?
Yes.
All right, Hannah, we'll send you a sticker if you promise to send me a signed photograph of yourself.
Okay.
Bye-bye, Hannah.
Bye-bye, Hannah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I did that, and then I did a pick of the week sort of programme
For 7 days.
on Sunday, which I sort of put together.
Good afternoon, welcome to 7 Days. I'm Rob Salvage, and I'd like to introduce you to the programme that squeezes a week's worth of broadcasting into an hour. The highlights today: tasty tattoos on a barmaid's bottom, the stridulating moth pupa, Eddie Edwards and his trash, and the Russian radio ham.
And I carried on then doing big special events, which I've always enjoyed, and I still get involved in lavish, over-the-top productions to this day. But we did some big shows from the Air Tattoo at Fairford. I remember doing 5 hours live from there once.
So the scene is set for a super afternoon of flying. We're watching now a spectacular display by the FB-111, the Vulcan, the B-52 and the KC-135 are joining it in the air
as well. Also during the programme, we'll hear from not one but two Air Chief Marshals in conversation with us, enough of the world's top pilots to start our very own Air Force. Musician Mike Oldfield, who learned to fly in Gloucestershire, will be joining me shortly. We'll hear about the fastest and highest plane in the world. We say happy birthday to the Red Arrows, and we'll explore every nook and cranny of this remarkable show, the International Air Tattoo at RAF Fairford. We also have lots of good music, and here's Paul McCartney and Wings with Band on the Run.
Stuck inside these four walls, sent inside for...
And so we went on for 5 hours, covering a huge number of aviation-connected stories, from the alarming number of Tornado jets which have crashed recently, to a presentation of certificates to disabled flyers by King Hussein of Jordan.
And since the days at BBC Radio Gloucestershire, what have you done with yourself?
Well, I went back to Bristol, did a lot of broadcasting at Bristol, and I still do some broadcasting in Bristol. I was part of the team that set up Thames Valley FM. The BBC kind of created a new big sort of radio station in Oxfordshire and Berkshire a few years ago, and I did the breakfast show on that for a few years. I've done bits and pieces of telly, still sort of involved in bits and pieces of production, got a few projects on the go, but mostly I'm involved with boating now. I do a lot of sailing. Sail a wooden square-rigged sailing ship called the Matthew, which has been to Gloucester and is coming back again to Gloucester, which is very nice. Did some races down to the Mediterranean.
You've done the Fastnet race as well, haven't you?
Did the Fastnet race, yeah. So a lot of offshore sailing racing. I've got a fleet of passenger boats which I run and operate now in Bristol, which is doing trips up and down the river. So that's my sort of mainstay and bread and butter. But still, to be honest, Pete, I enjoy chatting, as you can probably tell. I enjoy mixing and mingling with people. And I enjoy being slightly over the top, maybe. Anything to stop having a proper job, my dear. Which Radio Gloucestershire was a bit about, actually. We had a lot of fun.
And there's a photograph of you there years ago, and you haven't changed an awful lot.
Well,
Just a slightly more mature, perhaps, and not in your behaviour.
Well, no, I don't think in my behaviour. Much of the chagrin of lots of people around me, but there we go. I'll try my best.
Rob,
have a good time, though, haven't you,
It
Pete?
really is. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Pleasure.
I am sailing.
Rod Stewart and Sailing. And now to finish, a man who I've met for many years, but who is the man responsible for me being on the radio. It's Nick Herbert. So it's a pleasure now to talk to the man once again who introduced me to radio. I was grabbed on your 10 to 1 It's Nick programme and taken to learn to sing. You used to grab people and get them to go and do daft things, didn't you?
We did. We sent Lucy Longhurst actually out in a radio car who'd go and grab people to do daft things. Also what we did on that show was something called Down Your Dustbin. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember it very, very well.
There's one particular thing that's causing a little bit of havoc around the county at the moment, particularly in Cheltenham and Gloucester. It's called Down Your Dustbin. It's an excuse to go and rummage through somebody's rubbish.
It actually isn't a takeaway, it's a freezer pack, and it was so exotic it was faggots.
And that's the sort of thing we find in people's dustbins. People did suggest they call it rummage through your rubbish or split your sack or something, but I thought Down Your Dustbin was probably the best thing.
And you did mixed up proverbs. I remember hearing you talking to Rob Salvage about mixed up proverbs, and you'd leave one word out and you speak them very, very quickly.
Yeah, did we take the proverb, we leave out one word, we mix them all up, and people have to call us to tell us what the word that was missing.
If I can demonstrate to you, tell me which word is missing out of these. Eggs put all one basket in don't.
The
No.
put your don't
No.
eggs basket
No.
in the put
No.
not.
No. Eggs put all one basket in don't.
All.
No.
The
No.
basket eggs.
Let's try another one. Try again. You don't
Put.
try at if first try.
Succeed.
Brilliant. Other the always the greener is on the grass.
Grass, greener, green. Tom Jones.
Other,
grass.
yeah. Other the always the greener is on the grass.
Other the always the greener. Side.
Brilliant.
Oh,
brilliant.
side.
So hopefully
I
we'll
see.
get people of a
That's
higher
very
calibre
good.
than that. That's
Well, I mean,
Saturday.
everybody else is more intelligent than me, so easy peasy, really. But
Crossword helpline you used to
Yes.
get people to ring in for?
Yeah, that's because I was doing the crosswords while I was doing the show. There'd be 2 or 3 records on, and I would do the crossword, and I always couldn't get a couple of them, so I thought, I'll tell you what, we'll just put it out to the audience, and it became a sort of weekly event that there would be the crossword helpline.
And of course, the Eric Club, we talked about Eric the Mouse, and Eric the Mouse comes up whenever you talk about BBC Radio Gloucestershire at the start, because you were the voice of Eric the Mouse, weren't you?
Yeah, I'd got the job at Radio Gloucestershire, but we hadn't started yet, and we were due to all meet in a couple of weeks' time, and I got a phone call from David Solomons, the manager then, who of course was about to be my new boss, and I wanted to say the right thing to him, and he said, I noticed you've got a degree in drama and English. We've got a new mascot we're going to launch this radio station with. It's a mouse, will you be the mouse? And I thought, well, I can't really say no, can I? So I said, of course, Mr. Solomons, I'd love to be. So I turned up, and in that first year, I had to dress up as Eric the Mouse and go and do all sorts of things, including meeting Princess Anne.
Exactly. And there's a picture of you in the mouse suit with Princess Anne, but then there's a picture of you in a suit.
Yeah.
I didn't know you ever owned a suit.
No, it is the only suit I've ever owned. Seriously, I still haven't owned one since. But I had to do a fast change, and then I had to be introduced to Princess Anne as the man who was Eric the Mouse, and she said to me, it must be very hot in that costume. I was being told I had to keep in character, and I said, oh no, Mum, it's not me, it's a real 6-foot mouse. And she looked at me and raised her eyebrows and moved on to the next person.
And how did the title of your programme, 10 to 1, it's Nick?
Yeah, it wasn't mine, it was David Solomon's. Because he was a big racing man, he liked the horses, and he told me it was a racing term. Of course, I went with Cheltenham and the Gold Cup and everything. And I thought, yeah, great, it starts at 10, ends at 1. I'm called Nick, makes sense.
So after BBC Radio Gloucestershire, briefly, where's Nick Herbert been?
I went to Australia and worked in Melbourne for a while, for a year or so, and then I went to London and worked at some radio stations then. And then in 1998, I gave up broadcasting, and I now run an audio production company in Oxford.
Well, Nick, what I've got to say is thank you to you, because without you, seriously, I wouldn't have been holding a microphone, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, and it's all down to you. In my memoirs, you'll be the man who's mentioned.
I tell you what, it's good to see you doing it right now.
Nick Herbert. And yes, it's true, he started me off. BBC Radio Gloucestershire opened on the 3rd of October 1988 and was officially opened just over a week later on the 11th by Princess Anne. So, you've heard about us back then. It was a great start team, and there's a great team at the radio station now. Many thanks to the people that took part, and to those who didn't take part and didn't appear in this programme. I think you very, very much indeed. Everyone has played their part in this great radio station. I'll be back with you next week. To finish today, though, this is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I'll see you next week.
I can't believe it's 30 years ago.
It supports the county, it's about the county, it promotes the county.
You've made a huge contribution to the community in the county over the last 30 years. I'm looking forward to listening in over the next 30.
And all I can say is, you don't look it. You don't sound it either, really.
Because we love stories.
People.
Music.
Sport.
Because we love our county.
BBC Radio Gloucestershire.